Hello.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you? I'm Yadira Soto-Feliciano. I am an assistant professor of biology and a member of the Koch Institute for Integrative Cancer Research, and this is my lab.
Awesome.
Yes.
This is great.
Happy to be here with you today.
Thank you. Thank you for making time. You're a very busy person. All right. First things first. What is your research focus?
Yes, so the lab is interested in understanding the mechanisms that the cell utilizes to package our genetic material inside the cell, particularly the nucleus, which is a very physically constricted space.
Yeah.
And we have to put this very large molecule of DNA in 10 microns of space in diameter. So evolution has come up with these very clever mechanisms to really package that material in a polymer that is called chromatin. And my lab is interested in understanding the mechanisms of compaction, but also decompaction of chromatin, and how those mechanisms become dysregulated in the context of human diseases, particularly cancer.
What did you do your undergrad?
Yeah, so my undergrad, I am originally from Puerto Rico, so I was born and raised there, and I did my undergrad studies at the University of Puerto Rico-Mayagüez, where I studied chemistry. And then after that, I moved to Boston to work as a research assistant in Bob Langer's lab, which is one of the biggest bioengineering labs in the world.
Yeah.
And then I had the opportunity to work in a very cool project, basically synthesizing these lipid-like materials that are now utilized, and we're actually the precursors for the materials utilized for mRNA delivery, particularly mRNA vaccines nowadays. And that's a very relevant and known topic these days. And then after that, I joined the PhD program, the biology PhD program here at MIT, where I trained as a cancer biologist with Michael Heman at the Koch Institute.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
We're neighbors.
Yes, third floor neighbors.
Amazing. What motivates you as a scientist?
Yeah, I am fascinated by how molecules and really molecular machineries are operating in such a regulated fashion in the nucleus in particular, because the nucleus is, it contains a lot of proteins and a lot of biomolecules, and they're all in this very constricted space.
Yeah.
And if you think about it, it's a very crowded space, but where all this regulation is coming from. And I think that to me is a very fundamental and interesting question that we have some answers, but there's still a lot of unknowns.
Yeah.
And I think it's pretty evident that in human diseases, when those mechanisms are not working properly, that leads to very fatal consequences. And that's, I think, something that really motivates me in my science.
Cool.
Yeah.
So you're a newly minted faculty?
Yeah.
How's it been so far?
It's been great. I feel like it's, when you go back home, you say it feels like home. It certainly feels like my scientific home.
Awesome.
Everyone has been super welcoming, and the building hasn't changed, but it has, which is interesting, right? Yeah, it's really, really amazing, and I feel so fortunate to be back here to start my own group.
What did you like about your training environment here, but also at Rockefeller?
The environment is very conducive to interacting with very different scientists.
Yes.
And by this I mean, scientists interested in understanding molecules and complexes to scientists interested in translational mechanisms of for example, cancer or other diseases that are studied within this community. And I don't know if it's physical proximity of the buildings or just kind of innate ability of people to just talk to each other, but I think it's something that really creates for very rich training and very nice, I would say, training opportunities for people. And I really enjoyed that as a PhD student here, and I certainly benefited from it. But Rockefeller is a very special place because I think they really value the very top science. They provide all the resources that you might think of and you might need, and not just that, not at the science level. I think also at the personal and kind of work-life balance, they have a lot of resources to make the lives of scientists that are part of that community much easier. For example, they have this very awesome on-site daycare facility that MIT also has several of them, but it's kind of all constricted within one campus that is very small, and that is one of the examples of things that they do to really make your life, your personal life be part of your kind of science life, and that's something that I really enjoy.
So what do you miss about being a trainee? Because now you're in charge of everything.
Yeah, this is an excellent question that I was talking to one of the students yesterday about. Being on the bench.
Oh,
yeah, I haven't done a single experiment since I started as a professor. I spent a long time on Zoom, a long time sending emails, but I still have hope, and I'm directly training the people coming into my lab. Yeah. So I've done very little experiments, but not one of those full day type of experiments.
Yes.
And I really can't wait to be able to do that. And I think once things settle a little bit, I'll be able to do that.
So what do you like about your new position? Because the job's now very different.
It's somewhat different. Yeah, I do love being, able to craft and really tailor the vision of my lab, and just having the ability to not just tailor the research directions that the lab will take, but also to mentor people at different levels. And that's something that I somewhat had the opportunity throughout my career, but it's not the same level, right?
Yeah.
It's not the same level of responsibility. It's not the same level of, I think, impact to some degree. And that's something that I'm very excited about, being able to show what I know, and things that I consider interesting in terms of directions to my mentees, and hopefully they'll get excited like me. But yeah, and also learn a lot from them, because as I said, the community here is very diverse in terms of expertise, backgrounds, and I think in that sense there's a lot that I can learn from students and other members in the lab as well. So
awesome. What is the worst part of being a faculty?
The meetings and all the emailing. I think it's a little bit too crazy with the new way of doing Zoom and all that. We underestimate the breaks that we really need in between those meetings, and we're scheduling things back to back that it should be prohibited. But yeah, I think that's something that I'm looking for when things are much better with the pandemic. Just doing more one-on-one interactions, and that gives you a little bit of a breather in between meetings. So
walking from one building to another is
and just getting some fresh air and then restarting, right?
How do you make time for yourself? Because back-to-back meetings, and at the end of the day, what do you do to relax?
Yeah, no, I have to make time for myself and my family. So I have a small child, and at 6 o'clock my work day has to end, because I need to pick him up and do all the things that we do when we get home, right? Prepare dinner, give him a bath, play a little bit, and then put him to bed. And that, honestly, it's fun, because he's old enough that now we can have actual conversations about how his day went, and that I consider sort of a kind of a mental break from the work, and I kind of disconnect that way, deal with the house, and then when everything's settled, I can go back to my computer and send more emails. But and on the weekends we really try very hard to spend some time coming into the office and taking care of some things, but really spending time with him doing things in the museums. I also have a dog, so we try to coordinate all those things. But
cool. How is being a parent in academia?
Yeah, it's amazing, and I think the reason why I'm able to say this is because I've been in amazing institutions that provide the infrastructure and the help to really make it work. And I mentioned earlier that Rockefeller is probably one of the best examples of this. So I had a child when I was kind of in the middle of my postdoc, and having the ability to put him on daycare since he was 3 months old, and being able to go there and feed him every 2-3 hours without having to coordinate many things. It was really the only way that I can see myself being able to do that. And then when we started here, he would just go straight to the daycare here. That is amazing. So I don't know, I think it can be fantastic. It can be really a wonderful experience, but you really have to have the right infrastructure and kind of network of support to make it work. And I don't think institutions that don't provide this are really conducive conducive to this, and it's unfortunate, right? Because
Yes.
I think everyone should be able to have access to these opportunities if that's a choice that they want to make, right? And I wouldn't do it any other way. I know there's time that I invest in my family, and I wouldn't change that for anything in the world. So, and perhaps the paper could have been published a year and a half ago or 2 years before, but it doesn't matter. I think as I said, I wouldn't have done it any other way. So,
Cool.
yeah.
What are some other factors that are involved in choosing the right institution for you?
Yes, so obviously there's a kind of personal family situation aspects, but then there's also the science aspects that oftentimes it's what people think about and kind of discuss. And just having the ability to live, and going back to the personal family aspects of it, having the ability to live close by the lab, it was certainly a deciding factor for us. Because we're not really into commuting, and just having the ability to kind of walk into the lab for 5 minutes and come back, and really not having to coordinate so many things around that, it's something that was for us certainly a must. Then kind of going, and we already talked about daycare, that's obviously a must. And the second part of it, which is the science aspects of it, I think for me was really seeing without having to think hard the potential for collaborations within my home institute.
I see.
And that's something that it was an absolutely must, because I feel that it's great that we are independent scientists and we can do these research projects that are very exciting, but I think if we're not able to interact with neighboring labs and other labs within the department, I think what's the point of joining that environment, right?
That's very true.
Because and it's a two-way situation. How they can benefit from the expertise that we're bringing, but also how we can also benefit from systems and expertise, approaches, and tools that are already in the department and in institute in this case. So that to me was one of the major reasons on the science aspect of the decision. The second one is really infrastructure for shared resources, because I think that's also another way that it's not directly collaborating with other labs, but with the actual core facilities within the institute. And I think it's better to work with shared resources, because you're really directly interacting with experts in those particular let's say flow cytometry. We have an amazing core here that is led by amazing directors and staff, and just directly interacting and troubleshooting your experiments with people that's what they do for a living. I think it's certainly something that for me was absolutely important. So
cool.
Yeah.
And then what is the coolest, most awesome thing you've bought since you started your lab?
Interesting. So yesterday we got this cell counter that I thought it was going to be a little bit less boring, but then the box looks pretty neat, and then it looks like an iPhone, and we haven't even unpacked it. So I thought that was kind of cool.
That's pretty awesome.
Yeah, cool looking. So they're taking some tips from Apple, I guess, for their packaging. Yeah, it's a brand new. Brand new cell counter. So I'm very excited about this. It's very simple and it does very simple things, but I don't know. I guess maybe it's a new faculty assignment.
No, definitely. That make it easier to do the work.
Oh yeah, for sure.
I completely understand that. So what do you look for in your trainees?
My trainees?
Yes.
Oh yeah, so I'm really excited about that part, and I'm currently going through that aspect of recruiting students to the lab. So we're going through rotations that first year students in the biology department have to do after the first semester before they join a lab. And I'm really excited. So we had 2 students on the first cycle and we have 2 students on the second cycle, and I really am looking for students that are excited about the science and the topics that we're interested in, but also trainees that are interested in being part of an environment that it's inclusive and respectful, and that we get along very well. Because at this particular stage of the lab, it's very important to set the right tone for everyone that decides to be part of it, and that's what I'm really looking for. That the members and the trainees are respectful to each other, are collaborative, are good lab citizens, and
definitely. What's an advice you'd give your younger self?
younger self, learn some computational skills. Yeah. Certainly.
Support that.
Yes, no, absolutely. And this is something that I tell everyone that I'm talking to at all levels these days. Because when I was a student, I think undergrad, I was a chemistry student and working in a physical chemistry lab, so we weren't doing a lot of informatics or computational analysis. But then when I started in grad school, I think we were going through that kind of phase that we started realizing that computational biology is actually becoming one thing with wet lab biology, right? But it wasn't quite clear at the time, and it's like, oh yeah, I'm gonna go on a cancer biology lab, I probably don't need so many computational skills. But then after I transitioned into chromatin and doing a lot of genomics and epigenomics high throughput assays, came to realize that it's absolutely critical. And I think nowadays in 2022, it's almost imperative. Like every single area of biology requires some computational skills. And this is something that I will tell my 2008 Yadira version, that you should learn some computational biology.
If you weren't doing science, what would you be doing?
Interesting question. I don't know. I can only see myself, and I think about this sometimes. Yeah, I don't know. I was always very... it wasn't very clear to me that I wanted to do science as a career until I started in college. But then, so I actually started as a chemical engineering major, and I thought I wanted to do engineering. But then chemical engineering is very, there's a lot of parallels with chemistry, and then I became more interested in the fundamental part of chemical engineering and basic science. And since then, I haven't looked back. So, yeah, I think maybe another discipline of science. I am very fascinated by physical phenomena. Maybe physics will be something that I will be interested in. Astrophysics, I'm very fascinated and don't know that much about the universe and kind of space, but something that maybe if I was starting all over again, I will get into.
Cool.
Yeah.
Do you have like a favorite book or movie or show?
I don't watch a lot of TV these days, and if I read, it's probably the news or a research paper, so I don't do a lot of book reading or kids' books. So I can tell you maybe a kid's book. We have a lot of those, and yeah, favorite movie. I have several. Interstellar is one of my favorite, and I've seen it 4 times, and it's a 3-hour-long movie, but it's so great. I think it's such an amazing movie. Yeah, I will say Interstellar.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
So what would you like to see change in graduate student training or postdoctoral training?
There's probably a laundry list of things that I think need to be addressed to make this, the ideal scenario. I think if I were to choose one particular thing, is educating people early on of all the possible career paths that we can take as a PhD in biology, chemistry, and kind of the closer disciplines. Because I think there's sort of a historical misconception that academic science is really the default career path that we should be taking after getting a PhD. And I think that has created, with that mindset and mentality, a lot of problems in this enterprise. And I think educating people early on of all the possible things that you can do with a PhD will really expand, the areas that we're now contributing very highly trained people into the world. And I think not just fighting for the very limited spots that academic science has, and I think that's probably one of the things that I hope to see, that we kind of erase this mindset of academic science is the default, and we call all these other career paths alternative career paths. I think we really need to remove that concept from our conversations and our minds, honestly.
Very true.
Yeah.
What is something that institutions can do, or academic institutions can do, or even industry, to support minority scientists?
Again, going back to the education part of things, I think a lot of these institutional issues really need to be addressed as early as possible.
I see.
And I think we should really start addressing the discrepancies in representation very early on. And I really appreciate and value all these efforts that we're doing at the faculty level, postdoctoral level, and PhD level.
Yes.
But I think really to make meaningful and impactful and long-lasting changes, we really need to start addressing the issues, not just in college, but even earlier than that. Cool. And just providing, education and support, and not just one time, but continue support to underrepresented minorities in STEM has to happen even from elementary school. And I think starting programs that don't last for a year, but kind of follow the trajectories of those students throughout, I think it's something that will really be the answer.
All right. Any last minute advice?
Last minute advice, in addition to get some computational skills. So I think one thing that I like to advise people that I talk to at all levels, undergrads, grad students, and postdocs, is that don't be afraid to reach out to whoever you think might be a good advisor or might have the answer to the question that you have. And having said this, I think there's oftentimes we are interested in the science and perhaps a position as a postdoc or as a student in someone's lab, and we're so afraid of sending that email because we feel that we don't know enough, that we will be judged. Just send it. What's the worst that can happen? You won't get an answer, but then you might get an answer, right? And I think just send it and try to reach out to people, and don't base your decision on, this person is going to be super busy to answer my email or my question or whatever it is. Just reach out and try to tap on the network of people that you have around you to get support. So
cool. Awesome. Thank you very much for making time for us.
Oh, no problem.
All right. Bye-bye.
Yeah.